Whatever you do, do not buy a Victory 4x4 rack for your rig.
Stop it. We're not saying that on camera.
First and foremost, the whole reason why you would buy a roof rack is to increase the capabilities of storage, utility, and just convenience. And the Victory 4x4 rack does the exact opposite of that. It is one of the lowest quality constructed roof racks I've ever seen in my life. Now, before I go any further on the reasons why you shouldn't buy one of these, let me just say that it's 100% my fault for buying one of these in the first place, not doing my research before purchasing one of these. But a lot of this information isn't available online. There aren't a lot of people discussing what I'm about to discuss. So let me go over the reasons why you really need to avoid one of these on your rig. The quality and construction of the Victory 4x4 rack is horrible. There are some major flaws in this, the way this is designed, and you really need to avoid it at all costs. First and foremost, the fairing, front fairing, is designed to rest against your paint, and they recommend that you lay down a clear bra on the top of your roof to help keep your paint from scratching. But as you can see, I can just move the rack, look at that, and I'm literally scratching sandpaper on my paint. That's a horrible design in so many reasons. One, if you were to overload this rack, this is going to fall down onto your roof. It's going to bend your roof or dent your roof. Secondly, you're literally going to sand a hole. And thirdly, the fact that you have to buy a clear bra to install a roof rack is unacceptable. Secondly, the way the rack mounts to the car, this is probably the biggest reason why you should avoid the Victory 4x4 rack at all costs, no matter what. The way they mount this to the car, here we go, is completely unacceptable. First and foremost, the bracket requires you to silicone every hole so you don't get water in your car. Just make the brackets the right size, guys, and just make the hardware fit. Why do we have to add silicone caulking? This isn't a shower project, this is a roof rack. Secondly, the way the bracket is designed, as you can see, it kicks out and then up. And if you know anything about physics, if you were to hold a weight in your hand out, your hand eventually is going to get tired and it's going to want to fall. And that's exactly what this arm design does. It makes the weight go out, and then not only are you putting stress on the bolts here, which could lift up and ruin the threads, but it's going to bend this tab. In fact, there's holes in here, relief holes in here, so if it does get too stressed out, it is designed to bend. That's horrible. And then finally, the way you adjust the height of your rack is literally just the tension of this nut against this bracket. If you've ever tried to squeeze something in your hand like this and then push on it, it's gonna move. And that's exactly what these are gonna do. You do have adjuster slots in here to raise and lower it, but eventually these are gonna move down, and this rack side rail right here is gonna end up touching the side of your rig. And finally, another huge reason why you should avoid this rack at all costs is the material they use is just too thin. I have a 160 pound rooftop tent on the car right now. It's the Roofnest Condor Overland 2. Super stoked on this because it has all this ability to add accessories to it and increase my storage. But just by putting the tent on the crossbars right now, you can see that crossbar is a whole lot lower than this crossbar, and it's already bending. Sure, there are rails that go along the tent that disperse the weight across all the other crossbars, but for that to bend that much without me or my wife in it is completely asinine. What were you thinking, Victory 4x4? Let's make the crossbars here out of Swiss cheese and make it so that nobody can put a tent on their car, because I thought maybe I'm doing something that isn't recommended for this rack. So let me go look up the static load rating and the dynamic load rating for this rack, and guess what? They don't publish any numbers. If you go to their website, which I'm going to show here, the only thing they say is more than your stock rack. That's it. They don't say anything else. That means they don't test this stuff. They don't put it through any sort of quality control. And if you do buy this for your car and you do put a rooftop tent on it, you're going to put yourself and other cars on the road and your family in danger. Frankly, the last thing you need is for this thing to be vibrating on the trail, which you can see it's bending, and have one of these break, and then this thing can either slide forward or slide back. In fact, if you put too much weight on this here, look at this, I can probably bend the bar down so that the hardware touches the top of my roof. That's horrible. So what we're gonna have to do today is we're gonna have to take this off the rack. We ordered a new rack, it hasn't arrived yet. Thank God we got one from Sherpa, who not only tests their product, stands by their product, but also gives you load rating numbers for their product. On top of that, their material and their quality control is through the roof. So bear with us as we show you how to take this off this Victory 4x4 rack so we can go have a trip with some good peace of mind. Go. Come on.
Got it? Careful, babe. Oh my god.
All right.
Good.
All right, here's going to be a huge indicator of the quality of the Sherpa rack versus the Victory 4x4 rack. I don't have any other rack with me today. I don't have a Rhino rack. I don't have a Prinzu. I don't have a Front Runner. All I have are these two racks. And so I'm going to compare these two. But I'm sure if you have other racks at home, they're gonna pass the sniff test. So what I did was I brought a new side rail from the Sherpa rack, and I'm gonna compare it to the side rail from the Victory 4x4 rack. First and foremost, you can literally see visibly how much thicker the Sherpa rack is compared to the Victory 4x4 in terms of the material. But we're gonna go ahead and measure the material just so you get an idea of exactly how much thicker it is. So we're gonna open this up, close it down, 4.6 millimeters. Get this nice and exacted out. What does it say right there? 7 millimeters. Already much, much thicker, higher quality metal. These are the old Victory 4x4 side rails. Look at that, whoa, like wet spaghetti. And then we'll go to the Sherpa side rails. Barely even moves. I mean, barely. Ugh, all this silicone, so freaking lame, dude. Now we're gonna compare the crossbars. If you remember when I installed the Victory 4x4 rack, it took me an extra 2 hours to clean up the hardware of the crossbars because none of the threads were cleaned up. In fact, none of my hardware would go in it. So I had to get a sacrificial bolt and clean out every single thread of every single crossbar. Now with that one hint, guess which one is Sherpa versus which one is Victory 4x4. That's right, the one with the clean threads is from Sherpa, and the one with the mooied up threads are from Victory 4x4. It's the small details, right? Like they took the time to clean up the ends of these bars, clean up the threads, make it look pretty, make the user feel good, and ship it out. I want to show you really the big thing that makes this rack 10x better than the Victory 4x4, and honestly probably one of the best racks in the market. We've already gone over the thickness of the material, but I really want to talk about the mount here. The rack we had previously, the mount would bolt into the roof here, kick outwards like my hand, and then try to hold itself up at an angle, which is like, as we all know, dog shit. Like you can't hold something up out at an angle. The way that Sherpa designs their mounts is all the weight goes on the bar, through the mount, and then to the vehicle. There is no bullshit like extending out, side hanging. If you have something super duper heavy on top up here, the load's gonna go to where it needs to go. The previous rack, the only thing that held the load onto the roof of the vehicle were 2 bolts that went here into the side rail. A lot of videos don't show you this. In fact, a lot of rack companies don't go through the procedure of why they engineered the rack they did. Now, this is gonna sound like a crazy plug for Sherpa, and really it is, because I've had a Rhino rack before, and their quality's pretty high. I've had that Victory 4x4, and that quality is complete dog shit. This is how a rack should really work on your vehicle. Now I'm about to install the side rails across and then put in more crossbars, and we're pretty much done. It's the next day. The install's going a little bit slower than I thought because, you know, life gets in the way, but whatever. It's the next day. It's Saturday morning, and we got all the tent mounts on the Sherpa rack, and we're ready to install our tent. These tent mounts keep the tent somewhat elevated off the bars. So the problem we had with the hardware, like touching the roof, should go away, because not only is now the tent elevated up a little bit higher, but also it's going to allow for easier access to get to the latches on the tent and open and close the tent. When the tent was sitting on the bars, the latches to open the tent on the previous rack would get in the way and you couldn't actually open the latches. But now, since we're up a little bit, we should be able to access the latches at any time. So that's a huge plus. They recommend that the middle mounts have double the both sides, because this is where all the load is happening on this bar here. I do have other bars to help stabilize it, but you can see that this is triangulated onto the actual mount. So they do double mounts on this one. Then as you move forward, you have this one again to help isolate the tent. We could have easily put these mounts all the way up here, but I actually wanted to put them in here, one, to even the distribution of the load, and I didn't want to get the mount too close to the edge of the rails of the tent, just in case something happens. I want to give myself just a little bit of leeway. So now what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to put the tent on top here, get underneath and tighten the hardware of all these mounts, and we should be good to go. All right, we are going 65 miles an hour on a smooth stretch of highway, and I wanted to give you guys a sense of the wind noise with the rack and the rooftop tent. Now, I know Sherpa is very famous for their racks being silent, so the rooftop tent up there kind of doesn't really do it justice. However, I'm gonna be silent here for about maybe 6 seconds, so you guys can just hear what it sounds like at 65 miles an hour. You can hear more engine noise than you can rack noise, which is huge. Now go ahead, Emily, open the thing. There's a little bit more wind noise up there because we opened the sunroof, but still not bad. In fact, we're having a conversation right now at normal volume.
Yeah. I mean, compared to what we had before, when once we opened that, it was like, oh my gosh.
Another huge positive to the Sherpa system is those tent rails, or the tent mounts that elevate the tent off the bars just a little bit, prevent the tent from making a rattling noise when you go over little bumps. In fact, we don't hear any rattling up top anymore. Just smooth as eggs, baby.
Yeah.
9-day difference. All right, so now we're gonna try and get to a spot and end the video there. Reason why we needed to get rid of that roof rack is the load rating and the quality of that thing was just dog shit. And now that we have something that can handle the load of our tent, ourselves, and all of our gear, we're going to use it. Yes, we might become rooftop tent people. We might go back to a ground tent. But it's time for us to really enjoy the Condor 2 Overland from Roof Nest, because it's going to be our first night in the tent. So that means the wife and I and the dogs are going to sign off. We're going to cook dinner. We're going to go to bed, and we're going to call it a night. So thank you so much for watching. If you do have questions on why we went with the Sherpa rack over the Victory 4x4 rack, drop us a comment below. If you want to know more about the tent, we will gladly do a whole video on the Roof Nest Condor 2 Overland tent. But until then, we're going to sign off, and we'll see you guys on the next one.